Hello and welcome to Inside View. I'm your host, Joel Metzger. Joining me on the show today is Supervisor Clyde Clapp, and he represents District 5 in Calaveras County. Supervisor Clapp, welcome.
Thank you, Joe, for having me. It's been a couple months since I've been here, I think.
Well, it's great to have you on the show, and I know that many people are still getting introduced to you because you're still fairly new to the supervisor role. So hopefully we'll have some time to go into how you got there and how you've taken on those responsibilities. But before we get into some of the local politics, I just wanted to introduce some of your history to people. So can you take me back to where you grew up and some of the things you did during your career?
Yeah, I grew up in Brentwood. It was just a fantastic place, and I was blessed to be there. And I moved up here. I was looking for a piece of property that I assumed was at Discovery Bay. I was actually a young builder at that time, and I basically made a right turn, and instead of a left, I ended up in Valley Springs. And where I live right today, I bought that lot that same day. And so I knew I was in I liked the area, plus I bought the lot next to it. And pretty much every time I came up, I would buy another piece of property because the property values compared to Discovery Bay was a huge difference. It was like, I really couldn't believe they were selling property for this price. And I moved up here probably just in my late 20s, and by the time I hit 30, I was up here for good. And I quit. I left good practice down below. And it was scary, because it was, it's like cutting the apron strings, because there was comfortable. I knew I could make a decent living. And when I moved to Valley Springs, there was nothing. But just beautiful. But we had the lake. We had I lived by the Calaveras River. The place is one of the most beautiful places in the world as far as I'm concerned. And at that time, I could have lived wherever I wanted to, and I choose this. And I do like the way it's developing. I like the shopping in the area. I love all the people. Almost all my old friends from Brentwood have all moved up here since then. So they're just older and grayer, and that's it. But we're all retired. But it's the same group of people, really. And so I truly believe I was blessed to end up here. Because the people are great. Everyone you talk to, it's just a good community. Everybody's wanting the same thing, it seems like. And so it was hard to leave, but then when I finally made the choice, then instead of going on weekends to mow my lawn and stuff in Brentwood, I sold my house, and that was the end. I was up here for sure then.
And you said you were doing building down in Brentwood?
Yes, building and subdivisions.
So you were kind of doing developing things and things like that? Okay. Now, did you continue doing some building up in Calaveras County as well?
When I left down below, I was down probably 10 years ago. A friend's my house burnt down. I built this house for him. But I don't contract anymore. I don't look for work. When I moved up here, I had to do something, so I built my rental homes and stuff, and that's basically what I live on is my rentals and stuff. And so then when I became supervisor, I let most of it out, and it's all managed by property management now.
Okay.
And but yeah, that's what I really did. And I liked my job and stuff, but up here you couldn't build a lot of homes. You had, 3-4 people a year moving up here, so there wasn't work up here to speak of.
Yeah, you said that this is one of the most beautiful places on earth. What are the things that draw you to Calaveras the most?
Well, I was looking up by Marsh Creek and stuff if I stay down below, because it looks like this. It has a creek. It has the oaks and stuff. And when I came up here, it was just exactly what I was looking at trying to buy there. It didn't have the population and stuff. And that's what I liked. Some people want parks and stuff. I feel I moved up here and I do have a park. I have Hogan's. I have places to go around, and so it's good that way. I do like that part.
So have you been involved with community issues for many years, just in terms of if there was a decision to be made or something that impacted the community? Have you been kind of an activist, would you say?
Oh, yeah, I used to umpire Little League games.
Oh, okay.
And so you can't get any more political than that. Because at the end of the day, half the people hate you, think you're the worst umpire in the world, and the other people thought you were the greatest umpire. And I just tell them, well, next game, you'll probably think the opposite. And I did that probably for 4 years. And so you get a thick skin being an umpire. So you get that. And the kids were great. And a lot of these kids I was umpiring, they're in their 40s now. So it's, because it was, roughly 28 years ago. And so, and I did enjoy that. I didn't care for the grown-ups. The kids were great. The grown-ups were horrible. And it's almost like that at the board meetings. You go there, you enjoy the people there, and some are difficult to deal with, and a lot of them is, I know, because I know most of the people that go there, especially in my district, and they're probably kinder to me than the previous supervisors and stuff. And a lot of people go there they want to be acknowledged. Like they have, and I think that's what 90% of the people go there. They want to be acknowledged that they're a person, that they have, their opinion and what they want. And if you can somehow make that, I think, you smooth a lot of this stuff over.
Yeah. So when it came to your decision to pursue being a supervisor, tell us how you came to that decision and what led up to that.
It started out at first. I've always been involved with politics. I mean, if the judges, the people who want to run for office, somewhere around the line, they'll contact me because I've been around that much. I know a lot of people. And on that one part, it went in, and they started a road. First started off with Olive Orchard Road, which is a horrible intersection and stuff. And they ended up giving some funds back to a developer and stuff, which I like the developer's homes and stuff. He builds an attractive home. But it was just to do with the road. It was a dangerous intersection. It should have been fixed, and it still should be fixed. It's still a problem. And then it went from that to the asphalt plant. It went from the asphalt plant to commercial grows, and I, like I said, I'm on Calaveras River, and the asphalt plant's right across the river from me. So it was like I was going to move, and so I have a 5-acre place with a nice home. So I'll move away from there, and I got a commercial grove right next to me on that. So I'm not going to live there. So it was at a point that I'm going to have to unload a lot of property and move. And it came to the point, so why should I move? I've been here for 38 years, and these people that just moved in the last 3-4 years are running me out of my home. So it became really a fight. It was easier to fight them than to pack up and leave. And so I had no intention when we started the recall on Steve Kearney, and we helped Steve Kearney get elected. So, I mean, that was sort of a decision that took some time to come to. And because I like Steve as a person, and so we were actually at the same barbershop, same everything. So it was uncomfortable at best, Yeah. And so
you ended up being the one who received the most votes when the recall petition was successful, and so that's how you became this new supervisor.
Yeah, because then when they had the recall was successful, and then it went to the ballot, and then during the election and stuff. Then because I had no intention of actually running until about the middle of the recall, because then it became, well, who's going to run if the other person is defeated and I never wanted to put my name out there because I always wanted to be the issues what the recall was about, not one person over another person. I thought it was best just keep it on the issue and not the personalities. And then when I ran, it was half reluctant because I spent $1,300 on my campaign. I didn't even on the ballot. I didn't even have a response on. I just had my name there with no response because it was $450 for the response, and I was trying to keep it under 2,000. That was I was actually more interested in doing that than winning. It was seeing if I could do it under a certain. It made it a challenge to a certain extent, and it made me more comfortable when I did win that way because I didn't buy the election. I mean, I actually went, door to door. I think Dennis Mills ran his campaign pretty much the same way. He actually went door to door. And we had the same platform, really. And that's really why I'm honored to work with the people on the board right now because I have the same philosophy as most of them, and it's really a decent board. It has decent people on it, so I'm glad for that. And
what was your platform, Glad, the main issues in your platform?
It was real simple. Is I've been your neighbor for the last 38 years, and for the next 2 years I'd like to be your supervisor. And with us working together, we can keep commercial grows out of our neighborhoods and keep heavy industry out of our neighborhoods where we live, play, and raise our families.
All right.
And that was it. I mean, it was no more of that. I've had people since I've been there with the cannabis. That's all we talk about during the supervisor's thing anymore. And they come up, well, you can vote that this way because we know when you ran, you really didn't mean what you said. You just said it to be elected. Well, no, I meant everything I said in that simple little statement. That's what I ran on. That's the reason I want to stay here, because there's a certain point that it's your home and you treat it like your home. And if it's not your home, then you don't want to be there. Yeah. And I was at that point. A place I moved. Like I said, I bought my place the day I seen it. And I was at the point, I'm going to pack up and move. I'm not going to live here anymore. And so it was a big decision for me because I left a lot behind to move up here.
So you said everyone's talking about cannabis and marijuana. Let's talk about that because something big happened today. Oh. And tell us what that big thing happened with Measure B.
Well, everybody's phones start, blowing up like mine's doing right now. And we're getting texts and stuff like that. We got it, mostly from Megan, our legal counsel, and so that all started coming, and so the court ruled that B would be taken off the major, off the ballot, and that.
And for those who don't know, what was Measure B?
Oh, Measure B was a ban on commercial marijuana and some other things that conflicted with Prop 64, because when Dave Tuno and them started Measure B, Prop 64 wasn't passed by the voters yet. And so when Prop 64 passed, it says like everybody can have 6 plants for recreation. You can't ban medical marijuana going through your city limits or county limits. So those, contradicted the Measure B. So there was going to be litigation and stuff involved with that at that point. So even if it would not have been taken off the ballot, it would have been challenged the day that voters passed it, if it passed, or rejected. But if it passed, it would be challenged. And so at that point, we knew it because when it came before the board, we had Prop 64 to look at, and we had Measure B to look at, so we see the differences and stuff on it. And so at that point, the board took a poll of the board to put a permanent ban in place by the board. And so that part is still moving on, and at this point, it's been drafted by legal counsel, and I believe Peter Maurer should be publishing it probably the first of next week.
And that's the planning director, Peter Maurer?
Yeah, because it has to go for public review for 30 days because we had an environmental impact report done on it because we're doing everything so we won't be challenged in court on it.
So Measure B would have banned commercial marijuana and other things by a vote of the people.
Right.
They would have come and voted. That means it would have taken that ban out of the Board of Supervisors' hands. The people would have made that decision.
Exactly.
Now that, and that was going to be in early May, right? Was it
May 2nd? May
2nd. So now that is no longer going to go on the ballot because the court ruled that, was the wording wrong? Was that?
It basically said, instead of it being a people's initiative, it looked like it had some form of authority to it because it says the Board of Supervisors. Okay. So it wasn't initiated by the board; it was initiated by the people.
So that couldn't stand with the current language.
Right. It gave it some type of authority that didn't have because it looked like it was from the authority of the Board of Supervisors. So the language was bad on it.
So with that no longer coming to the ballot in May, you said the Board of Supervisors has already drafted up its own ban.
Yes.
And I just want to make sure I'm clear. This is not a more aggressive form of regulation. This would be a full ban, so there would be no marijuana that can be grown?
No. This ban, 64 is state law, and 215 state law. So we can't, as a county, supersede those laws.
Okay.
So our ban would be pretty much just on commercial, and it would consider 64 and 215 would be part of that. So a person can still have 6 plants, just like you can have 6 plants, but you could also have a dog. But your dog, to have that dog, you'd have to have it licensed by the county. You'd have to have shots for the dog. You'd have to keep it contained in a yard. You'd have leash laws on it. So it'd be regulated. You can have your pet, but it'd be regulated. So it'd be the same way. So we would have regulations on it, and that. So 64 people still have their 6 plants, but it'd be under regulations by the county.
Okay.
But to put a commercial grove in, they won't be able to do that.
So the board is not going to just restrict commercial grows. They're going to completely ban them, but they'll comply with the state laws that everyone has to comply with.
Exactly.
Okay, I gotcha.
And what's good, and what a lot of people, like I'm sort of like, this is sort of a relief for me, because if it were passed by the voters, that would supersede anything that we did. And so we'd have two bans out there that you'd have to work out. The court would have to work out on the one, because the People's Initiative denied the people 6 recreational plants. It denied the medical transporting between the county lines and stuff. And so that would be worked out in the courts. And then it'd be this way. With this being gone, we don't have the contradictions between 2 ordinances in the county, one by the people and one by that. And plus, we can always go into our ban and we can tailor it to fit, because right now the state's coming up with different rulings and stuff. They'll start issuing permits and stuff, or licenses for people to do, like they issue contractor's license. So they'll start doing that, and they'll start in 2018. But with the board's ban, we can always tinker with it. We can, we won't be locked into something. If something changes or something, we can roll with the punches that way. Where, like Prop C is a tax on marijuana, I think is grossly inadequate. I don't think it brings enough money in for what the cost that we're paying for it, because a lot of people don't realize, like, if there's a bust and stuff on the marijuana, like the murder cases and stuff, we're paying both sides. We're paying the district attorney side, and then we also pay the public defender side. So, and we're also paying the sheriff. So we're getting bills like crazy, and we've gotten not 10 cents from the cannabis growers.
And Measure C was an initiative that was passed last year, which would tax based on canopy square footage of marijuana. This is the commercial marijuana?
Yes. It was like $2 a foot for outside grows and $5 a foot for inside.
But that did not tax the last harvest. That would be this year's harvest that it would tax? Or?
It would, if we seen any money at all on it, it would be probably in June or July.
June or July. Now, will the ban that you're talking about from the Board of Supervisors, will that still allow the tax revenue to be collected, or would that make it so the tax revenue would not be collected for Measure C?
That's
still to be determined?
Yeah, it would be determined.
Okay. Now, one other question I had was, under the urgency ordinance, there was a flood of people who came up to the county and bought property and planted marijuana. Many of those were commercial grows. They invested thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars doing that. If the board goes through with the ban, as it sounds like the board will there be any kind of legal issues with people who were allowed to grow and invested and now are not allowed? Is there any concern about that? Or?
That probably as much as when I bought a dozen lots up here and they put a ban on septics. I didn't have anyone, feel sorry for me. It was a risk I took. I ended up, in the long run, it took me, a substantial amount of time, but I finally got where we could have alternate septic systems, and most of those lots now have homes on it. But I was 5 years, delayed and stuff. But it's like if you buy buy stock in the stock market and it goes bad. I mean, it's a gamble. I mean, those people, it was an emergency ordinance. It wasn't like, so they knew it was a gamble coming in. And I don't know, and like I really don't know what's next year will bring. But all I know is all of business ventures I've taken, and I lost a ton of money in 2007 when the property values crashed. I lost $2 million in property values. So no one oh, gee, poor Clyde, and that's my retirement. And, it's came up substantially since then, but because you don't lose the money until you actually sell. And a lot of those people, you go, gee, they got a permit. Well, their permit's never been certified yet, but they've already got a crop out and made the money on it. And they've never even had the inspection. So, so they're making money right now and still have not paid any money to the county. And some of those people, like the grove next to me, they never got a water discharge permit from the state. They never had a resale license for it. They never had an outlet, like a co-op that they're selling to. They just, grew the pot and sold it.
So that's actually a good point, is that even under the urgency ordinance, there were a lot of regulations that the county simply didn't have the staff or financing to enforce because it was just too much. So a lot of these things weren't inspected. And so that begs the question, law enforcement is always one of the main topics of conversation regarding cannabis. How is law enforcement going to be able to enforce a ban if there isn't additional funding coming in to support that? And are you concerned about people who invested all this money continuing to grow illegally and just taking the risk?
Well, we're in the same boat, really, as we have a ban in place, but Tuolumne doesn't, Amador doesn't, but they're coming to Calaveras County because Calaveras County is like, okay, I'm going to go to Amador where the sheriff says, you come up here, I'm going to arrest you, or I'm going to go into Calaveras County where they have an emergency ordinance, and they say we're really not going to do anything because we can't, like the statement you just made, we can't do anything about it. Mm-hmm. Well, neither can the other counties around us do anything about it, but they're not advertising it. We're advertising, basically what we're doing right now. We're just saying, hey, we can't do anything about it. But I'm not for prosecuting. I've never been for prosecuting, marijuana or tobacco and stuff like that. But to have it in our community and stuff and around our kids, you can always just go ahead, abate the problem, the nuisance, and leave a citation. But if you're trying to prosecute people and put them in prison for it, that's very expensive. We can't afford that. But we can afford to, mess up their crop. We can afford to go ahead and hire a person in the district attorney's office for property seizures. Mm-hmm. And you only have to seize, 3 or 4 people's homes, and that gets around real fast too. So there's things to do, but to sit there and go like the previous board and how we're doing right now is throwing our hands up and say we can't do anything about it, and not do anything about it. It's just like last Tuesday, the sheriff received $32,000 for eradication from the federal government. So that can eradicate a lot of pot farms if they choose to use it for that. I mean, I know about because the board had to sign off on it. It's a grant from the federal government. Mm-hmm. And now how the sheriff uses that is his discretion. We can't tell the sheriff what to do. And so there's stuff that they can do that they're not doing. And
would if the ban from the board goes through, would this be more of a code compliance issue if people were found to be growing commercially, or would it be more of a sheriff's office issue, or maybe some of both?
Well, I think that's the problem is right now is without the ban, with the emergency ordinance, if the sheriff sees a pot farm going somewhere, he has to come down, check, pull records, see if it's permitted, where the permit is. Then actually, I believe he has to get permission, get approval from county council, which he shouldn't have to get approval from anybody if he's law enforcement. And so it makes it harder for him to even do his job because he has to sort out if it's a legal one or a not legal one, And so that, and they haven't. I believe I heard there was like 45 that's actually complied with all the regulations.
Out of how many?
And there's probably been a couple hundred turned down. I mean, so There's still a lot in the process, and it's absurd to even think that we can do it because, like from my area, Valley Springs, and you take it all the way down to Wallace. I think there's 27 places that the health department has to inspect. From the donut shop, the bakery, to common grounds, to places like that. So in that same amount of area, you probably have 300 pot farms. Well, if they're barely keeping up with 27 or say 30 restaurants, how are they going to keep up with another 300?
Yeah.
So if you want to, from what the position, if you're going to regulate, we would have to have an army of inspectors and stuff, and we just cannot do that.
The other side of the coin is that you hear a lot of people argue that marijuana does have its downsides, but it could be, one of the biggest boons to the county's finances, since we had mining and timber and things of that nature. What do you think of that argument, that if the board cracked down a little bit more and made it get out of residential neighborhoods and, not impact the quality of life, that it could actually be maybe a win for the county or a positive? How do you feel about those arguments?
I think that's the local lie going around, and I'll give you the example since I've been here for as long.
Yeah.
Is when I came up here, you had the wood industry going good. We had a train going through Valley Springs twice a week.
Yeah.
We had the cement plant running. We had the asbestos plants going. We had a lot of heavy industry, and this was the poorest town I've ever seen. This is poor. When I came up, this was extremely poor. But you had all this stuff going. Well, heavy industry couldn't support it. Well, what happened when it all crashed, which it did, and the Lockatinna came in, the new Hogan's came in and then once all the older people coming up, people look like me. I didn't look like this when I came up here. I was young. I was 30 years old. I had dark in my hair. But what happened, the older people came in as a retirement community. You had the tourists. I mean, I used to not go downtown on weekends because all the people with the boats and stuff for Hogan's, so the place was packed. And so with that, and if you go and, like, say, Lockatinna, you go in Lockatinna, those people don't use a lot of services. You know, they don't have a lot of kids in school. There's few kids because my kids were raised there. But most of them are older people. They're retired people. They have extremely good incomes. And so they're not taxing the school system. You don't have police cars over at the house and stuff because, you know, they've already figured out how to get along with each other. Yeah. And so you don't have the fussing and fighting. It's a cash cow. You get a lot of money from them. And then you start pulling in, and if you want to go back to where we came from, I seen what it was. I mean, when all the tourists started coming in, we were on the front page of Wall Street Journal, the fastest growing county in the United States. I mean, it was a boom area. And if you go look at all the stuff that's happened, and you go down to Valley Springs, that's the old Valley Springs. That's when you had all the mills and everything gone. Mm-hmm. You go after the mills quit and the tracks got lit up, then you got Lockatinna, you got Gold Creek, and those people that moved there, they didn't move here to get a job. They moved here because of the housing, the location, like the reason I moved here. That's the reason they moved here. Mm-hmm. I mean,
so you think that marijuana would take away from the appeal?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
We only have just less than a minute left, but if people want to find out more about this or get involved or comment, how could they go about doing that?
They can always see me at the barber shop.
Okay.
I'm having a town hall meeting Thursday.
What's the date on that?
Thursday is the 30th, I believe, at 6 o'clock at Rancho Clubhouse.
Okay. Which
will probably be pretty decent now because the pot won't be all over a pot now. And
then they can attend the board meetings if they want?
Yeah, they always attend the board meetings, but I'd rather, that they really have a concern, is get a hold of me in person. I'd rather sit down with them, have a cup of coffee, and give them not a 5-minute, but a whole hour. And a lot of times I'll have lunch with, like Marnie and Bonnie was asking me, and I said, well, let's just have lunch. I don't, and that way they had the whole time with me.
Okay. All right, and people can go onto the county website and they can look up your email and things like that. Right. Okay. Well, Clyde, thank you so much for joining me this evening. I really appreciate the time.
Joel, it's always good seeing you. I hope I see you again, too. Thanks,
Absolutely.
Okay?
And thank you for joining me on this edition of Inside View. I'm your host, Joel Metzger, and I hope you join us next time.